Samir, I'm going to come to you last, but certainly not least here. As someone who has been watching the US-India partnership for many years, certainly I think when you look at the joint statement that came out of the Prime Minister's visit, quite frankly, more continuity than change when you read that statement, which might be surprising to some in a moment in which it seems like, the world is on fire and things are changing faster than we can keep track of. So I just want to push you a little bit and say that joint statement made it perhaps seem like much will be the same here. But what should we actually expect may change and need to change as the United States thinks about the partnership with India? And how do you think India is going to approach its technology partnership with the United States differently at a moment in which it's certainly perhaps not the same government in how it thinks about international partnerships than it did a few months ago?
No, I think, Lindsay, you're right. And first of all, let me congratulate Rudra for putting this together. Wonderful. Rudra for actually building this global platform out of India at a time when these platforms are needed to actually serve partnerships and opportunities that abound. So thank you to Carnegie and you and the MEA for investing in this conversation. And thank you for not making it Chatham House, because under Chatham House rules, no one shares secrets. They always do it when the camera is on, otherwise there's no fun. So if you want the innards of discussions to come out, turn on the camera. I always say that, spectacles are what people like today in policy and politics. It's really a different world. So 2 quick points. I think on the India-US, you're right. I am stunned by the consensus on India in the United States, because we don't have that even in India about India. So US has more confidence and congruence in its appreciation, assessment and engagement with India than we have with ourselves. So well done to the US. But it's not going to be the same. It is certainly not going to be the same. I think there's going to be very clear departures from the past. Number one, the Trump transactionalism is going to demand performance from India. Biden was lazy in his implementation. Trump is going to be extractive in the implementation. You will have to see India do more to keep up with the expectations from the White House, which is not a bad thing for India, by the way, because we love being lazy ourselves, right? Because we've been there for 3,000 years, so we can wait for another 3,000, right? So we love that self-assessment. So I think a little bit of continuity and a little bit of transactionalism could just be that right mix for us to do more. And let me give you 2 particular ideas that were popping out for me when I was reading the joint statement, and especially on the defense tech side, right? One was, of course, the oblique reference to future fighters and the jets and the aviation space. But I think that's overstated. I was particularly interested in the undersea platforms. And I think that is where the future lies if we really want to ramp up our relationship. Because till now, America has not parted with those crown jewels. And if they are willing to, and by the way, Trump, I think, is going to be more willing than anyone else, and could be fueling India's strategic capabilities, deterrence capabilities, maritime domain awareness capabilities, giving us some of those critical platforms, you could completely change the texture of trust that till now has been deployed more frequently than actually been visible in engagements, because we have still not seen some of America's most strategic technologies being available for India. We have seen market technologies being procured through commercial deals. Let's be honest here. I think that could be this moment when we actually operationalize the civil nuclear agreement by sharing some of these crown jewels that America has still not shared, even with Australia, for example. AUKUS is the big departure, right? It's the first time the Americans are thinking about a nuclear submarine with Australia. And believe you me, AUKUS began with Australia, it is going to end with India. Because Australia does not have the market capabilities to support a whole new line of production. So eventually AUKUS 2.0 is really about India, and I hope that Trump is really about catalyzing that kind of transformation in relationships, something that Ashley was working in the early 2000s to achieve. So that's the first part. The second is that if you look at AI and some of these more emerging, some of these new sectors of technology, they have a curious texture. Very fast moving, deep seeking all the time, if I can use your verb, deep seeking all the time, and yet the lock-ins are very long. So there is a fast evolving space which tempts you to buy into the latest offering that's available on the racks. And yet, once you decide to go in a particular direction, the lock-ins are intergenerational. You will decide today where you want to be on the technology spectrum. Is it going to be more towards the authoritarian closed spaces? Is it more towards the open market-based economy spaces? So you are locking yourself up to onto the future now, even though the change is happening at such rapid pace that you're never going to be able to get the right choice. Or the right decision on making that choice. So it's a very interesting space, very difficult to choose, and the lock-ins are huge, and therefore Europeans don't decide, right? So in many ways, the Europeans, and you mentioned Huawei in your opening context-setting remarks. Let me just tell you, we've been talking about Huawei forever. They are in 170 countries, including all of Europe, and they serve 3 billion people. So we can keep talking about politics and geopolitics and opportunities and markets, but market has taken a call that Huawei works. And you've not been able to put together any coalition that has been able to dissuade even your transatlantic cousins that Huawei might be injurious for health, right? So I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that because of the very attractive nature of innovation and the fast-paced change that is always upon us all the time, we are locking ourselves into unusually complicated situations. Policymakers don't buy equipment. Corporations do. And the lock-in happens at that level. Conversations happen at a different level. And unless we can bring truly, and that's very difficult for democracies like US and India, unless we can use a whole of nation approach where we actually have more intimate conversations with our private sector, where we are able to share our concerns with them more freely, you are not going to see a market-based approach. And therefore, India is not going to be it's not going to be able to exert market muscle, because Indian market will be splintered between using hardware and compute capacities that China is going to make available very soon to the whole world, and it's going to compete with the best coming from the United States, where DeepSeek has given hope to all others that the assumptions of West Coast were flawed. You don't need too much money, you don't need too much branding, and you don't need too much noise to create something significant and substantial. So I think we have to really rethink our relationship in that context. America should be hoping that the next 5 DeepSeeks happen in India and not in China. And they should be trying to find ways of enabling those new deep-seeking moments coming in trusted geographies. I like that corridor. I like that trusted corridor. We call it the green energy corridor in climate, in the climate conversations as well. Can we have a green energy corridor? We should have a technology corridor that extends from the US to India to Indonesia via the UAE. And if we can build that corridor, that ramps up. So that's my final point is. On the EU, I think since Thorsten is here, I have to take a dig at EU. But look,
I'll take a dig at EU.
But look, EU is a very strategic actor, and I think you reduce their agency at your own peril. There is no geography in the world that took energy from Russia, took the Chinese markets and security for America and prospered. No other country in the world was able to be fueled by 3 warring factions at any given length of time. The Europeans are wicked. And if you think that they are benign and they are lazy and they are not in the game, you do it at your own peril. They have outlasted all of us. they colonized us, they liberated themselves, and they still regulate us. It's a fact. So do not try to brush away the importance of the EU. They are wicked folks. I know it from personal experience. Now, here is a thought. There are two, if you do game theory, there are two possibilities. EU can go to Beijing, which they are planning to, and decide to leverage it as a negotiating tool with the Americans. Very good. It helps the India-US relationship. Or the EU could decide that, cousins can be rotten, but they are still family, and we need to stick with the transatlantic relationship, and it still works for India. But we need to keep EU close to us. India and EU is a standalone relationship, and it has it should not be affected by what happens between the EU and the US. In fact, we've been asking in New Delhi that EU now create an independent corridor to India, which does not have to go through DC. And I think that is something that we hope also emerges from this friction between the cousins, in this particular Trump moment the world is experiencing.
Thanks, Samir.